Alright, right off the bat, I will tell you this review will be filled with spoilers. Spoiler warning, I can't talk about this movie without talking about this movie. So I just saw Spider-Man No Way Home last night, less than 24 hours removed. I don't normally do movie reviews. You guys know I usually do like Pokemon unboxing videos or gameplay videos. But I kind of want to talk about this movie. As of right now, I know like maybe 5 people who have seen this movie, and I need more people to talk about. I need to get my thoughts and my feelings out. I need a little that catharsis. I need to just let out these things. So basically, it starts the same way the last movie ended. Everyone found out that Spider-Man is Peter Parker, and for some reason, that makes him public enemy number 1. They did talk about how he killed Mysterio, but I will say though, this movie does a weird thing in the beginning where they just that's like the first 10 minutes of him being public enemy number 1, and then he's just not. First spoiler of the movie, Matt Murdock is in this one. Yeah, Charlie Cox from Daredevil, he's actually in this one. Now everyone was kind of speculating like, oh, what if Peter's lawyer was Daredevil? And that was a little bit of a fun fan theory, but then it came true. Bit of a running theme throughout this entire movie, I'll tell you that right now. So kind of the first act of this movie is kind of like a John Hughes movie, like a real teenager coming of age movie for the first act of this movie for some reason. The big main thing in the first act is, man, we got to get to MIT. How can we get into MIT? Because they're about to graduate from that high school and they really want to get into a good school. So they think, oh, let's go to MIT. We'll all still be together in college. It'll be fantastic. But they can't get into MIT because everyone thinks that Spider-Man's a murderer and MJ and Ned are best friends with Spider-Man. So they're kind of also social pariahs. So they can't get into MIT. So they all get letters from MIT saying, yeah, you know Spider-Man, so screw you, kind of. So Peter's like, damn, I mean, this ruined my life. I can't let it ruin MJ's life or Ned's life. This is all on me. They didn't do anything. So he goes to Doctor Strange. Then that's the reason why he goes to Doctor Strange. Not because everyone knows he's Spider-Man. That's part of it. But because he wants to go to MIT. And do you guys remember that theory that everyone had where Doctor Strange is evil in this movie for some reason? Because in the trailers, he was kind of off. But no, in the movie, he's just like, all right, yeah, just quit bothering me and I'll do your damn spell. But as Doctor Strange is kind of like doing his spell, we kind of saw in the trailer that Peter was like, what about MJ? What about Ned? What about May? So as Doctor Strange is doing the whole thing, every time Peter keeps trying to rearrange the spell, it's messing up the continuum of the spell. And he keeps messing with it so much to the point where it just ruptures into like this weird vortex that looked a lot like what we saw in Loki in the Kang universe. All these different timelines and multiverses kind of coming together. And Doctor Strange, like he did in What If, he kind of contained it into this weird pocket. And Peter was like, yo, what was that? And Doctor Strange was saying, that's you. This is you messing up here. This little pocket universe I had to kind of create. Yeah, that's all on you. Good luck at MIT. So after about a day or two, Peter actually finds the headmistress of MIT to try to explain, hey, yeah, I'm Spider-Man. You may not like me, but like Ned and MJ, they're the smartest people I know. You know, they're fantastic. They should be able to get into MIT. But like you guys saw in the trailer, as he's on the bridge talking to the lady from MIT, that's when Doc Ock shows up. And I think Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man No Way Home have to kind of like shake hands and have the agreement that, yeah, Doc Ock is going to have the best fight in the movie. And I got to say this right now. So Peter, in this universe, in the No Way Home, the MCU universe, you ain't ready for like villains. You know what I mean, dog? I mean, yeah, you had guys like the Shocker and you had the Vulture and you had Mysterio, but you're not ready for like villains. You know what I mean? For instance, this movie takes a weird turn when the Goblin shows up, like we saw in the trailer. So you guys know in all the posters of Spider-Man No Way Home, like the Goblin is like, he's kind of like in the background. He's just kind of like there, kind of out of focus, way in the background. You kind of see a little shadow of him. And that kind of made me think that like, he's not going to be a huge part of this movie. He's probably going to like show up for a little bit. He's probably going to be, you know, like just a kind of a cameo. Like, yeah, these villains are coming by. They're swinging by. So it turns out that Green Goblin is going to be the main villain of this movie. Kind of going back to what I was talking about just now when I meant that he's not ready for like villains. He ain't ready for like villains, you know what I mean? And that's kind of what I miss a little bit too. I miss villains, where they just kind of want to be a villain. I like villains with motivations, who want to get things done for a right reason. But sometimes I just want a villain who just wants to be a dick. For instance, you're gonna have guys like Vulture. You know, Pete, I'm doing this for my family. And then you have guys like Mysterio. I just want to be famous, Peter. And then you have guys like the Green Goblin. Fuck your life, ping pong. So as the Goblin's about to fight Peter Parker, Doctor Strange goes, no, you ain't ready for that nonsense. And he says, hey, I've been kind of rounding up some of these guys that you pulled from the multiverse. Oh yeah, by the way, that's a real thing. So what I need you to do, I need you to round them up. Danny Phantom style. Here's a thermos. So he currently has 2 villains locked up, the Lizard and Doc Ock. So he's going out to find these villains, and then the first thing he encounters is Electro, who is blue at first. But then as he's zapping Peter, there's a big wall of sand. He goes, hey kid, it's me, Flint Marko. I'm here to help you. So Peter thermoses Electro, and then he thermoses Sandman. He goes, okay, that's a Sinister 4. I need to find my Sinister 5th. But it turns out that Norman is back to being Norman, not Green Goblin. So he's kind of hanging out in this alley talking to the Goblin Head. And the Goblin Head is speaking to him like, bro, your limbs are weak, your head is garbage, kill that Spider-Man. And I was like, no. And then he smashes the mask. So we don't have that mask anymore. So if you guys ever saw that promotional material, Goblin isn't wearing a mask and he's on his glider, but he has like a hoodie. That's why, because he smashed the mask. It was kind of sad to see the mask not in the rest of the movie past this point. The mask, yeah, it's silly, but it's kind of also kind of cool. It's kind of creepy. I just missed it. Oh, and I forgot to mention that Doctor Strange built like this little box that's like, hey, if I press this button, it's going to send them all back to where they came from. So once you gather all the dudes, I'm just going to press this button, they can all go home. And Aunt May just kind of calls him and says, hey, you know those guys you've been looking for? Yeah, one of them just kind of walked into my work and has been asking about you. So Peter's running frantically into the feast where they go and feed the homeless people. And Norman Osborn's just sitting there in a hoodie, just eating some fruit. And he goes, hi, I'm Norman Osborn. Sometimes I wig out a little bit, but I'm willing to help you. And Peter's like, you're kind of a little too Willem Dafoe for my liking, kind of creep me out here. And Aunt May is like, hey, we help people. That's what we do. That's what Spider-Man does. So I think we can help these people. So she convinces them like, hey, you know, maybe these guys are bad guys, but they're not bad guys. So Peter takes Norman back to the lair where they're keeping all the bad guys. And he says, hey, what if I healed all of you? And Dr. Strange says, no, because they're gonna die. And Peter's like, what? He goes, yeah, it's their fate. They're supposed to die. When we send them back, they're gonna die. And Peter's like, damn, I can't let them die. And then he kind of steals a device that Dr. Strange had that he's going to press the button and send them all back home, which led to a really awesome, fantastic fight scene between Peter and Dr. Strange. You know that little move that Dr. Strange does when he like pushes your soul out of your body and then you're just kind of just like waving there a little bit? So it turns out that the spider sense is more of a reflex than anything, because Peter's holding the box and Dr. Strange's trying to grab the box like his body, and the body's going, and he can't grab it because it's a reflex. And there was a cool little moment here too. When you guys know those in the comics, you see like the little spidey sense. You guys kind of see little waves around his head. We actually see those in his astral form. So they fight in the mirror dimension. Everything's getting all flip turned, Inception upside down. And Peter somehow manages to trap him into the mirror dimension. And so he's gonna like, hey, can you please just hang out here for a little bit while I try to figure this out? And after Peter comes back from the mirror dimension, we do have a little moment where he's like, hey, I'm gonna science this. I'm gonna cure every single one of you, but I might need your help. And we have a meme moment. I think we had our first meme moment here when Norman goes, you know, I can help. I'm somewhat of a scientist myself. Oh, and I forgot to mention that Peter and May have been kind of crashing at Happy Hogan's condo. So they walk all these villains into his condo and he says, okay, I think I can kind of work in this station here. I'm gonna try to get a formula going to get all you guys cured. I don't know if you guys remember in the Spider-Man 2 when the Doc Ock has like, you know, like with the things attached to his arm, he has like a little inhibitor chip, and that thing gets fried, and that's why instead of him controlling the arms are controlling him. So Peter makes a new inhibitor chip and he breaks the old one and implants the new one. And after he implants the new one, Doc Ock is kind of like Weekend at Bernie's. He just kind of goes, and then when he wakes up, he's like, oh, it's been so long since I haven't heard the voices. I forgot what it was like. Thank you, my boy. And so Peter starts to get to work on everybody else. He has like a little inhibitor for Electro. He's trying to synthesize a cure for the Lizard, and he's trying to find, you know, a little serum for the Goblin. But as this is all going on, J. Jonah Jameson has been tracking down Peter. Like, hey, I'm gonna get the scoop. I'm gonna get the scoop on this Spiders, man. Which then made me think back to comics. He's gonna go, oh man, he's gonna see Peter hanging out with all these villains. He's, hey, Peter Parker, he stays the attack on the bridge. He's working for these weirdos. And that actually didn't happen. I was surprised that didn't happen, because what actually happens is Peter's getting like a sense. He's getting like, oh, there's something kind of really messed up going on around here. And turns out that wasn't Norman. That was never Norman. There's been the Goblin this whole time just hanging out. And so Peter webs him to a wall and he goes, oh, Peter, you really think you could have it all? And again, when I mentioned that the Goblin is the villain of this movie, I mean he's the villain of this movie. So he convinces everybody through a speech. He's like, hey, we're not broken. We're exactly who we're meant to be. So everyone starts fighting. There's a big fight. Peter's having to fight off the Lizard and Sandman and Electro. And I will say this right now. In this movie, Aunt May has been the most proactive Aunt May we've seen so far. Like, she has a hammer. She's ready to fight somebody. She's grabbing cures and potions. She's like, we might need this. We're going to need this later, Peter. And when I said before that Peter hasn't fought dudes like this before, like villains, he hasn't fought somebody like the Green Goblin. I mean, yeah, sure, he fought Thanos, but that was like a really dumb big purple alien dude. This is a guy who is as strong as Spider-Man and wants nothing more to just ruin his life. So the Goblin is just beating the mess out of this kid. He did like a Batista bomb through some floors. I saw him do an Arn Anderson spine buster. He might have done a pedigree, I don't know. So eventually it culminates. They're on the ground floor level. Police have been called, SWAT's coming in, and Aunt May is like, hey, Peter, man, we gotta get up, we gotta go, it's you and me. And the Goblin's like, do you want a tragic backstory today? And it's like that scene in the first Spider-Man movie when the Goblin's glider is coming up behind him. It just plows right into Aunt May. And I thought for a second that he just stabbed her. That it just impaled her. And then Peter fights him off and the Goblin goes, I'll be back later for your tragic backstory. And he leaves. But Aunt May stands up. She goes, hey, Peter, man, we gotta get going. We gotta get out of here. And I had a relief over me. I had such a relief. I'm like, oh, not Aunt May. Oh, thank God. Oh, she made it. And as they're walking out, she collapses. And I'm thinking, no. And Peter's like, hey, Aunt May, we gotta get going. And Aunt May goes, I just need a second to catch my breath here. Oh, what's that? And Peter looks at his hand and goes, oh, that's blood. You're bleeding a lot. She goes, yeah, crazy. And then Aunt May dies. She died. This ain't Peter's origin story. This is mine. So now there's no more debate whether there was an Uncle Ben in the picture. We have an Uncle Ben now. Her name is Aunt May. And during this whole thing, Ned and MJ have the box that's going to send all the villains back home. And also Ned has the teleportation ring from Doctor Strange. But he mentioned before that his family had a touch of the magic. So he accidentally creates a portal. He goes, man, I want to see Peter. Peter's in trouble. I need to see Peter Parker. So a portal opens and there's Spider-Man in the alley. And they said, hey, Peter, come here, man. Come on down. And so Spider-Man flips through the portal. And I'm like, hey, you're kind of tall for a Spider-Man. Homeboy rips off his mask. And it's Andrew Garfield. I marked out. Not just because I love Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, but because I knew what that meant. And of course, they're super confused. They're like, hey, you're a Spider-Man, but you're a lot more taller and handsomer than our Spider-Man. And he goes, yeah, I'm Spider-Man. My name is Peter Parker. What are you gonna do about it? And MJ is saying, okay, try to do the portal thing again. We need to get Peter here. We need to talk to Peter. And Ned goes, okay, we need to see Peter. Let's get Peter. We need to see Peter Parker. I need Peter Parker. And then my dreams came true. Every single one of them that night. The portal opens and steps through Tobey Maguire. Up until this point, we've had Tom Holland. Up until this point, we've had Andrew Garfield. But now we have Spider-Man. And there's always been that kind of running debate about which was the best Spider-Man. But in my opinion, Tobey is Spider-Man. You guys weren't there back then. We didn't have nothing, but we had Spider-Man. And everyone was always saying, you know, who would win in a fight? In a three-way Spider-Man fight, who would win? Would it be Tom Holland? Would it be Andrew Garfield? The real answer is Tobey. You know why? Because Tobey came from the streets. You saw what that man went through? His uncle died in the streets. Holding him in his arms. Aunt May, house foreclosed. Homeboy was poor. He lived in a shack with a broken damn door. Homeboy fought Macho Man Randy Savage for $200 when the ad said $3,000. Man was an indie wrestler. He went through the circuits. Tobey's from the streets, homeboy. So there's a real fun moment between Andrew and Tobey when they're like, draw! And they start like webbing at each other, but like in the same pattern, in the same motion. So they're basically just mirroring each other. Okay, I had to make sure you were Spider-Man. I am Spider-Man. Okay, cool. We're both Peters. Sweet. And it turns out that Tobey Maguire Spider-Man was saying, hey, I've been trying to find your Spider-Man. Do you know where he might be right now? So they find Peter on top of the school roof having his tragic backstory fall right before our eyes. Homeboy's crying in the rain. His Aunt May, Uncle Ben just died. And then Ned and MJ are like, hey, buddy, we're with you. It's okay. Oh, by the way, there's some people you have to meet. They pan up, and then on the silhouette is just these two Spider-Men just flipping down. It's like, hey, Tiger. For me, it was my Uncle Benjamin. For me, it was my Gwen Stacy. They're saying, hey, man, we were where you are right now. You're feeling bitter. You're feeling angry. Don't be like us. I stopped pulling my punches, and I hurt people. I don't want that to be you. Let us help you. So they start working together. They're like, hey, let's get back to formula. Let's start curing these guys, and then we can send them home. Which leads to my most favorite part of the entire movie. They're doing science in a high school science lab. They're all working together, but they're talking. There are just moments when these dudes just talk to each other. They're validating each other's movies, if that makes sense. And for months leading into this movie, I was thinking to myself, if Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire are in this movie, I just want a scene where they're like, hey, what do you do about web shooters? And Tobey's like, what? Web shooters? What's that? And it comes out of his wrist. And they're like, ew. And he goes, yeah, that just comes out of me. And they acknowledge that it's gross and it's disgusting. And it's my favorite part of the whole movie because it's what I wanted. This is what I got for Christmas. This is my Christmas present. This whole movie is a whole Christmas present to me. Tobey Maguire is making a cure for the Sandman and the Goblin. And Andrew Garfield is making a cure for Electro and the Lizard. And Ned's like, hey, do you have a Ned where you come from? Tobey Maguire, Spider-Man? And Tobey's like, yeah, I did. He died in my arms after he tried to kill me. And Ned says, Tom Holland, Spider-Man, I'll never become a villain and try to kill you. That will never happen. It will never happen for as long as I live. So now the final battle happens. So it's happening on the Statue of Liberty, but there's construction on the Statue of Liberty because they're replacing the giant torch with a giant Captain America shield, which I'm all for, which I think we should do in real life. Little outdated is that torch. You know what's modern? You know what's hip and American? Captain America shield. And now we're having more moments where they're just talking to each other. And they just said, hey, what's the craziest villain you ever fought? And Toby says, I fought a black goo alien from space once. And Tom Holland says, hey, I fought an alien in space. And poor Andrew Garfield, he says, I want to fight aliens, man. I'm lame, dude. I suck. I'm lame. And Toby is in full dad mode. He goes, no. You know what? You're amazing. I want you to say that. Say it to me right now. You're amazing. Because you are. You are amazing. And just those little moments of them just interacting with each other and once again validating each other's movies and knowing that they exist together. This was Spider-Man 4. This was the Amazing Spider-Man 3. In the sense that this is where they ended up. That this is where their story is continuing. And we're having the closure for these films. And Peter goes on the news and he says, hey, if there are any villains watching, come to the Statue of Liberty. We got a present for you. And so all the villains just start descending on them on the Statue of Liberty like, hey, all right, let's start rounding them up, start curing them. But at first, they can't work together because they've never had to work with anybody else before. Except Tom Holland, Spider-Man. He goes, hey, I was an Avenger. I know how to be on a team. Toby goes, what? The Avengers? That's great. What is that? Andrew goes, is that a band? Were you in a band? So Peter has to become team leader. He goes, okay, with the coordinator attacks, use your Peter Tingle and go. And so they are working together. The first thing they do is they take out the Sandman. The whole time, Sandman is a sand man. He's just a dude made of sand. But once they cure him, he turns back into the guy who played him in Spider-Man 3. And so now they have to take out Electro, who has a Tony Stark arc reactor on his chest now that amplified his powers to something that's never been seen before. And I will say this right now, there has never been a good way to not make Electro not look stupid. Just by design, Electro is a stupid looking villain. I think we can agree on that. I think the not dumbest he's ever looked was the Ultimate Spider-Man series. But even then, when they try to translate that into a movie, you got Blue Electro from Amazing Spider-Man 2. So they did the best they could. Just make him Jamie Foxx and just put electricity around him a little bit. And whenever he does the big lightning blast, put a little outline of a star on his face. See how that worked out. It wasn't the dumbest, but again, there's no way to make that guy look cool. So Electro's becoming a huge problem. They can't even touch the guy because he's just pure electricity now. He's just teleporting everywhere he goes. And then Doc Ock shows up and he's like, hey, let me deal with these spider people. But then Doc Ock betrays him and he grabs him with his arm and he's like, arc reactor, go! And now Electro is drained of his powers and now he's just a dude. Which leads me to another favorite part of mine. Andrew Garfield's like, hey man, hey. It's gonna be all right, man. We're gonna get you back home. And he takes off his mask. And Electro goes, man, you're from Queens. You help out people. I was hoping you'd be black. And Andrew goes, yeah, I'm sorry. And Electro goes, man, I hope there's some multiverse where there is a black Spider-Man. Oh, he's coming, bro. He's coming. Just wait. Just wait. So at some point, Ned opened a portal to see the fight, and he can't close the portal now. He's having a hard time closing the portal. And Lizard goes, I like that portal. So he goes to the portal. Chase ensues on to the Statue of Liberty. So they cure him, and he's all fixed. But now Ned and MJ are on the Statue of Liberty scaffolding. Now after they think everyone's all cured, like, okay, we have one more, but he hasn't showed up yet. And then from the back, you hear this cackle. And everyone says, oh man, it's the villain of the movie. And when I tell you, when the Goblin showed up again, the theater gasped. Because again, it's been a while since we've seen a villain. So the Goblin just kind of barrels through the scaffolding and explodes the whole thing, which leads Ned and MJ to fall from the scaffolding. And Tom Holland is like, yo, I gotta save my girlfriend. The Goblin just barrels through him and carries him off. So MJ is perpetually falling. And Andrew Garfield goes, nah, dog, not again, bro. And he saves her. And then as he's holding her, he says, are you okay? And then he starts crying. And then I started crying because that was his little redemption moment because he couldn't save his girlfriend in his timeline, but he's able to save her in this one. And I started crying like a lot. So eventually Doctor Strange comes back. He goes, hey, I've been kind of dangling over the Grand Canyon for 12 hours. I'm kind of pissed off about it. They started explaining the whole thing. Multiple Peters, multiple villains. Can you just help us out? We've been curing everybody. Look, they're all cured. And Doctor Strange goes, I didn't like your plan at first, but I see it's working, so I'm with you on this one. But in the chaos, it turns out the Goblin put a little little goblin bomb in the little thing to send them all home, and it exploded. And the thing that was supposed to send them home happened to be holding that pocket universe where everything was getting all multiversed. So when the goblin blew that up, the multiverse started opening. And it turns out the reason why everyone came through was because those were the people that knew that Peter Parker was Spider-Man. So all the universes and all the people who knew that Peter Parker was Spider-Man and all the universes, now they're starting to come through. And when you see these little divide in the multiverses, and there are little Easter eggs too, I was trying to like really see who was coming through. I saw the Rhino in there. And I was really hoping, I don't know why, but in my head, I was really hoping the landlord from Spider-Man was like, my rent. And Doctor Strange just says, hey, while I deal with this, you think you can deal with that villain? So a fight ensues and Peter is fighting the goblin, but Peter's like still mad about the whole killing my aunt thing. And he's real vengeful. He says to the goblin, I'm not going to send you home because I want to kill you. And that damn goblin, he's such a bastard. Attaboy, Peter. Attaboy. And then Tom Holland Spider-Man returns to the streets. Homeboy is crip walking on this guy. He's just throwing down left and right and just almost beating this dude to a pulp, and you feel it. I felt it in the theater. This guy is about to murder this man. Go from Spider-Man to Murder Man. And Andrew Garfield Spider-Man and Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, like, he's becoming the guy, he's getting bitter. So Peter picks up the glider and he's about to impale Norman with it. And then right before he can do it, Tobey Maguire just goes, and he doesn't say anything. He just looks at him. And it was the most powerful moment in the whole movie. He didn't say a thing. He just looked at him. All he said with his eyes, I've been here. This ain't you, Chief. You ain't the one. And as Toby tried to save Tom from himself, he gets stabbed. I didn't even cry when Aunt May died. I almost cried when I thought that Tobey Maguire was gonna die. But then Andrew throws the cure to Tom, and then Tom stabs him in the neck. The goblin is no more. It's just Norman Osborn now. He's back to normal. And this movie did make me feel really bad for some of these villains, especially Doc Ock and for Norman, specifically because they weren't bad guys. They were just possessed by evil things. Like how Doc Ock was possessed by the arms and Norman was possessed by the goblin. And what I think is a goodbye to Toby, it turns out, like, dude, I've been stabbed before. I'm from the streets. This ain't nothing. You think they can stop me? I'm from the streets. And then meanwhile, Doctor Strange is like, hey, this is a lot of multiverse. I can't really hold it. And Tom Holland says, hey, I have an idea. What if we go with the original spell? They're all coming here because they know me. What if we just do the original spell where we make everyone forget who I am? And Doctor Strange says, you know, that's everyone, right? Like everyone. And Tom goes, hey man, that's what we do. We're Spiders men. And Strange says, hey, you should probably say goodbye right now because they're not going to remember you tomorrow. And so Tom has a moment with Ned and he has a moment with MJ. He says, hey, tomorrow you guys aren't going to remember me. It'd be like I never existed. I love you guys. I'll miss you. I'll see you at brunch. So Doctor Strange does the whole spell, makes everyone forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and in doing so closes the gaps to the multiverse, but then it also sends everybody home. All the villains, they've been sent home cured, and then Tom Holland says goodbye to Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, and I saluted Tobey one last time. So then it's like the next day, it's snowing, it's Christmas, and no one remembers Peter Parker. Like he goes to visit MJ at work. So then I thought that Tom Holland was gonna have the 51st dates this whole thing, and it's like, hey, make you fall in love with me all over again. But you know what? When he saw Ned and MJ that they were happy they had the futures ahead of them without Spider-Man, he let them go. He said, I'll have a coffee. See you around, partner. So then we get back to square one with Spider-Man. He doesn't have a billionaire suit. Nobody knows who he is. All he has is a box and a really crappy apartment. But we see that Peter is actually making his suit. He's sewing a new suit. And this thing is proper red and blue. Like, it's glossy. So he's Peter Parking around the world and he's like, hey, I'm Spider-Man. And the movie ends. Nobody knows who he is. Nobody knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. He lives in a crappy apartment. He has no more Aunt May. He has no Avengers. He has nothing. So this whole movie was about getting Peter Parker back to that square one where Peter Parker normally is. He's poor. He's broke. He's in poverty. So the movie ends. I had everything I wanted for Christmas. I had everything I absolutely ever wanted. But then we had an end credit scene, which kind of ties into an end credit scene from the last Venom movie, Let There Be Carnage, when it turns out that Venom was transported into our universe. So Venom and Eddie are in Mexico. They're having a drink. They're talking about aliens. The aliens don't like stones. They like to eat people's brains. But then he just disappears after everyone that forgot that Peter Parker was Spider-Man. But then they kind of pan down and there's a little bit of black goo on the table. And then it moves. Admittingly, I was kind of a little disappointed because I thought they were going to do something a bit more with Venom in this universe, that it was just confined to these two end credit scenes that didn't have anything to do with each other. I was kind of disappointed by that. But there was a second end credit scene, and I think they should start doing these with all end credit scenes from now on. The second end credit scene was a literal edited trailer, a whole trailer for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I was in love with this movie. I thought about it all night after I got home from the theater. I'm still thinking about it. Like I said, I never make movie review episodes, but I love this so much and I needed to talk about it. I needed to get it out. That's how much I loved this movie. And I'm not trying to be those guys who try to hype up a movie like, oh, it was fantastic, amazing, but I legit am in love with this movie. I was tempted to see it again this morning, and I want to go down to Kevin Feige. Hey, I'll pay you $2,000. Can I just get a crappy 480p Blu-ray of this damn thing? I can just watch it whenever I want to, please? Would it be dumb if I gave it a rating? Ratings are kind of whatever. Like, if you want a rating, it's 10 Tobey Maguires out of 10, I will say, sure. If you haven't yet, if you can, if you're not on eBay paying $25,000 for a ticket, just go see this movie.